For my term paper, I have researched how poverty impacts crime in the United States. I gathered my results by reviewing several scholarly articles that discuss the effects crime has on poverty and vice versa. The relationship between poverty and crime is not black and white. Although there is a positive correlation between the two, it is to not be assumed that most people that live in poverty are criminals or are destined for a life of crime. In America, there is a perception that inequality and poverty may lead to crime. The purpose of my research is to find out if this is true. There are countless individuals throughout the United States that are having financial difficulties and are struggling to make ends meet. Due to income inequality and unrealistic societal standards, there is a pressure to put it on people to fund a life that meets up to these standards. Crime can be a tempting option for one to achieve these goals. Throughout my research, I set out to determine if it can be concluded that one's economic status influences the tendency of one to commit a crime. The U.S. Department of Justice endorses an economic theory that was published in 1978 explaining the economics of crime. In the research article, the primary argument is that criminals rationalize the option of one's own self-interest while taking into account the obstacles they may encounter in the economics and elsewhere. Making the decision to commit a crime is no different than making the decision to start a new line of work. Crime provides an alternative way for some in poverty to acquire material goods or money that they would have a difficult time or would be unable to obtain through illegal means. There are many factors that are responsible for rising crime rates in America. Some of these factors can be linked back to mental illness, poor living conditions, unemployment status, and poor education. Crime against poverty, including theft, can escalate when there is a low economic growth or joblessness. People can also be born into crime by growing up in low-income areas where crime is more prevalent. One can be introduced to more opportunities to commit crimes. Poverty and inequality do not just increase the opportunity for crimes to occur, but can also prevent people from escaping it. This happens because crime often surrounds communities and individuals that are in impoverished areas. Crime reduces the value of property and deters businesses from wanting to move to these areas. This ultimately makes it difficult for one to break out of poverty by dragging down the economic status in the area. Poverty and crime are impacted by a variety of factors, including lack of education, limited financial resources, poor health, a lack of employable skills, drug misuse, mental health illnesses, and impairments. The top graph has been created from collecting statistics from the Gini coefficient measurements from the years of 1991 to 2019. In the United States of America, since 1991, the Gini coefficient has been on the rise. The separation between the impoverished and the wealthy keeps getting greater. It can be concluded that when income inequality rises, as does crime, a direct correlation can be drawn between crime and poverty. The bottom graph demonstrates the influence of poverty on crime in the United States. These four graphs use time-spatial data from the United States from 1965 to 2016. The findings support a positive association between poverty and property crime. It can be concluded that poverty eventually leads to property crime in the United States. Unemployment and GDP, on the other hand, have neither long-run nor short-run association with property crime. These graphs would suggest that the government and politicians should focus more on poverty in order to reduce crime. In 2005, 37 million people, approximately 13% of the total population, lived below the poverty line, as defined by the Census Bureau. Poverty impacts a nation in the form of both governmental expense and decreases productivity, which can have a rippling effect on the economy and crime in society. The economic data suggests that there are ties between poverty and criminality. Poverty and crime often occur simultaneously. Through the reviewing of several different literature sources, it can conclude that poverty and inequality are driving factors of crime. Since the founding of the United States, the country has experienced issues with crime. After the 1900s, crime rates increased dramatically, reaching a high between the 1970s and the early 1990s. Property crime has a close relationship. Today, COVID-19 pandemic brings new issues with crime and poverty. In particular, COVID-19 has a severe impact on the American economy and has led to a significant increase in unemployment and inflation. Some of the answers to poverty crime in the United States include lowering unemployment, raising wages, strengthening unemployment compensation programs, investing more heavily in high-quality education. Despite being relatively wealthy in comparison to many other nations, poverty is still a major problem in the United States. Ultimately, it can be determined that if someone who is living below the federal level is more susceptible to committing a crime than someone who is above the federal poverty level.